Hi guys, welcome back. So today we're doing one of my favorite types of videos. We're talking about the top fashion trends for spring 2026. I always get really excited filming these because it's not just about what's in or out. It's really about understanding the mood of fashion right now. For the past few years, we've been living in this very controlled fashion era. A lot of minimalism, quiet luxury, very polished silhouettes. Everything felt quite intentional and safe. But when I was watching the spring shows, I kept feeling this shift. Things suddenly felt more emotional, more expressive, sometimes even a little chaotic, but in a really beautiful way. We're seeing bold colors next to soft romantic fabrics, very practical utility pieces next to full fantasy Rococo gowns, sporty elements styled with tailoring, sheer textures layered in delicate ways. It's like designers are not trying to follow one single aesthetic anymore. And what I personally love is that many of these trends are actually wearable. They're not just runway moments you admire and forget. They're ideas you can slowly bring into your own style, whether that's through accessories, proportions, textures, or just a new mindset when getting dressed. So in this video, we're going to go through 30 spring 2026 fashion trends, talk about the mood behind them, some designer references, celebrity inspirations, and just generally get inspired together. Let's start. After what feels like seasons and seasons of whisper soft neutrals, earthy browns, deep burgundies, and that whole quiet luxury palette that dominated our wardrobes, spring 2026 arrives like a joyful interruption. It's bright, it's playful, and honestly, it feels a little bit liberating. Designers clearly felt the same urge for fresh energy. On the runways of Loya, Dior, Ralph Lauren, and Versace, color wasn't just present, it was celebrated. Super-saturated primaries and punchy secondaries showed up everywhere, almost like stepping into a kindergarten classroom again, where every shade feels welcoming, optimistic, and full of possibility. And the truth is, there are genuinely no rules this time. That's what makes the trend feel so modern. You can lean into soft pastels that still capture the spirit of spring florals, or go all the way into striking, high-contrast combinations that turn heads the moment you walk into a room. Prada's unexpected pairings almost felt like an invitation. Just dip into the paint pot and see what happens. Sometimes the most beautiful outfits are the ones that weren't overplanned. Jennifer Lawrence has been subtly embracing this shift toward more confident color moments, especially in her recent appearances, where she balances vivid tones with her signature relaxed elegance. She never looks like she's trying too hard, yet the color instantly elevates her presence and adds freshness to her overall style. When experimenting with vivid colors this spring, think about creating looks that feel energetic and expressive, rather than overly coordinated. Let the color be the conversation starter. Sometimes a bold combination or a single striking shade can completely transform the mood of an outfit. If capris feel familiar to you, that's because they never really disappeared. In fact, they were already gaining serious momentum throughout 2025, quietly returning on runways and in street style before becoming even more visible this spring. What makes the capri story for spring 2026 feel so interesting is that it's no longer just about nostalgia. Designers are now treating the silhouette with much more intention, refining the proportions, modernizing the styling, and presenting it as part of a broader shift away from oversized dominance. After years of ultra-long trousers and exaggerated volumes, this shorter, more precise cut feels refreshing. It introduces movement, lightness, and a certain quiet confidence that fits perfectly with the transitional energy of spring. There's also an emotional layer to this comeback. Capris sit right at that intersection of past and present. They carry memories of early 2000s style, yet today they feel sharper, cooler, and far more fashion-conscious. Bella Hadid has been one of the key figures pushing the capri revival forward, repeatedly styling them in ways that feel edgy, model off-duty, and very trend-setting. Her looks prove how this silhouette can become a true fashion statement rather than just a nostalgic reference. Hailey Bieber brings a completely different energy to capris, more polished, minimal, and clean. When she wears them, the overall mood feels effortless yet considered, showing how versatile and wearable the trend can be in everyday styling. When incorporating capris into your spring looks, think about creating silhouettes that feel balanced and modern rather than retro. Focus on ease, proportion, and attitude. The goal is to make the overall outfit feel fresh, confident, and slightly unexpected. There's something undeniably romantic about the return of scarf dressing this spring. What used to be a finishing touch, a small accessory you'd throw on at the last minute, has now become the very foundation of an outfit. On the runways of Celine and Kalmeyer, the printed silk scarf stepped into the spotlight with real intention. It wasn't just styled around the neck anymore. It was wrapped, draped, tied, sculpted, becoming the crux of a modern wardrobe in ways that felt both nostalgic and refreshingly inventive. This shift also speaks to a broader desire in fashion right now, making familiar pieces feel new again. Designers played with exaggerated proportions and blown-up prints, transforming delicate foulards into statement elements that could completely define the silhouette. Multicolored silks were fashioned into fluid tops and dresses, wrapped around the waist for unexpected layering moments, or knotted over the shoulder in styling that felt expressive and almost artistic. It pushed the limits in a way that still felt wearable, which is honestly the sweet spot of great spring trends. When exploring scarf dressing this spring, think about styling in a way that feels fluid, intuitive, and a little bit daring. Let the print, texture, and movement lead the look. Sometimes the most striking outfits come from styling pieces in ways that feel almost improvised. Low-rise skirts, especially in midi lengths, are emerging as one of the most quietly directional pieces of the season. There's something so cool about the way they sit lower on the hips, creating a softer, more relaxed line through the body. It feels less controlled, less perfect, and much more in tune with the current mood in fashion, where effortlessness and subtle sensuality are taking center stage. On the runways, this silhouette felt particularly modern. At Chanel, in the highly anticipated debut collection by Mathieu Blazy, drop-waist skirts played a key role in shaping the collection's renewed energy. Similarly, at Tory Burch, lower-slung skirts appeared styled in ways that felt intuitive and wearable, reinforcing the idea that this isn't just a nostalgic callback to early 2000s dressing, but a refined evolution of it. The longer length keeps the look grounded and sophisticated, while the lowered waistline introduces a sense of freedom and quiet confidence. It subtly changes proportions, elongates the torso visually, and adds that slightly undone attitude that feels so relevant right now. Emily Ratajkowski has long embraced lower-rise silhouettes, often styling them in a way that feels natural, sensual, and completely unforced. Her approach makes the trend feel approachable, less about making a statement and more about embodying a certain relaxed confidence. When trying low-rise midi skirts this season, focus on creating silhouettes that feel fluid and balanced rather than overly styled. Let the lowered waistline bring a subtle sense of ease and attitude to the overall look. If spring 2026 had a soundtrack, it would probably be the soft swish of fringe moving as you walk. Texture and movement became major themes on the runways this season, and fringes, along with delicate feather accents, brought a sense of drama that felt both tactile and emotional. At Gabriela Hearst, fringe details cascaded along fluid summer silhouettes, while tactile trims appeared in fresh, polished ways at houses like Calvin Klein and Lanvin. Even traditionally refined codes were disrupted. Think frayed tweed interpretations at Chanel that softened the formal reputation of classic tailoring. Meanwhile, beaded fringe treatments at Loya, Loya, and Nanushka felt especially fresh, proving that this trend isn't one-dimensional. It exists somewhere between old-world glamour and futuristic experimentation. Feathers entered the conversation with a slightly different mood, less about constant movement and more about creating a striking punctuation point. Rather than covering entire looks, designers used feathers with intention. At labels like 16 Arlington and Brandon Maxwell, they framed silhouettes in a way that felt pared back, yet undeniably glamorous, echoing vintage Hollywood references while still feeling relevant for today. Ultimately, what ties this trend together is the emotional power of texture. Fringes dance, feathers float. They invite drama, personality, and a sense of play. And perhaps most importantly, they remind us that getting dressed can be a performance in the most beautiful way. Kate Moss has been embracing fringes for decades, long before they cycled back into trend conversations. Whether on the runway, at festivals, or in her off-duty moments, she has always made textured, swaying pieces feel instinctive and cool. When exploring fringes and feathers this spring, think about how movement and texture can bring emotion into your look. Even a subtle touch can shift the entire mood, making an outfit feel more dynamic, expressive, and memorable. Tailoring is going through a quiet but very exciting transformation for spring 2026. Instead of the rigid, ultra-structured power dressing we've seen in past cycles, designers are now exploring what tailoring can look like when it softens, shifts, and becomes more expressive. This season, the conversation isn't just about sharp lines. It's about movement, asymmetry, draping, and unexpected proportions that make classic pieces feel newly relevant. Silhouettes no longer sit perfectly centered or predictable. Instead, they wrap, fall, and curve around the body in ways that feel instinctive and almost sculptural. There's also a subtle rebellion happening here. After seasons of oversized suiting and exaggerated volumes, the new tailoring doesn't necessarily go back to strict minimalism. It redefines proportion entirely. Waistlines shift, hems feel unconventional, and layering becomes more dimensional. The result is tailoring that feels intelligent and fashion-aware without losing its sophistication. It's the kind of evolution that makes getting dressed feel creative again rather than formulaic. What makes this trend particularly compelling is how wearable it actually is. These modern tailoring updates allow you to maintain a sense of refinement while still expressing individuality. In many ways, this new approach reflects how our lifestyles have changed. We still want polish, but we also want comfort, fluidity, and freedom. Elle Fanning embodies this softer, more poetic interpretation of tailoring beautifully. Her looks often balance structure with romance, showing how unconventional proportions and gentle draping can feel elegant rather than experimental. She makes modern tailoring feel dreamy, wearable, and quietly fashion-forward. When trying the new tailoring this spring, think about silhouettes that feel intentional but not rigid. Focus on proportion, flow, and subtle asymmetry. The goal is to create looks that feel polished yet expressive, structured yet effortlessly modern. Athleisure returning for spring 2026 might sound like old news, and in many ways it is. This is a trend that has been shaping wardrobes throughout the entire 2020s, becoming almost a lifestyle rather than just a seasonal moment. But what's fascinating now is how it's evolving. Instead of repeating the same formula of tight leggings, obvious gym references, and streetwear-heavy styling, designers are approaching sporty dressing with a softer, more nuanced perspective. Fashion has always drawn inspiration from the world of sport. From equestrian influences in past decades to football mania and the athleisure boom of the late 2000s and 10s, these references constantly cycle back. For spring 2026, however, the mood feels more relaxed and quietly preppy. On the runways of Miu Miu, sporty staples were reinterpreted through a polished lens that felt nostalgic, yet incredibly current. At Loya and Mithridate, layered sporty references brought a sense of undone ease, colorful, slouchy, and almost reminiscent of school sports uniforms. but elevated in a way that felt intentional and chic. Another major shift lies in silhouette. Instead of body-skimming performance pieces dominating the conversation, designers are now embracing looser, more expressive shapes. Labels like TB, Tory Burch, Zankov, Bierut, and Kallmeyer explored this idea by loosening athleisure's grip on the body. The result feels cooler, more grown-up, and far less gimmicky. Meanwhile, contrast styling became key. At Prada, technical sporty elements were paired with structured, refined pieces, proving that fashion today thrives on tension rather than uniformity. After years of living in comfort-first clothing, we're not ready to abandon ease, but we are craving more personality and polish. The new athleisure reflects this beautifully. It feels spontaneous, adaptable, and very reflective of modern life, where we move seamlessly between different roles and environments throughout the day. Amelia Gray captures this updated athleisure mood effortlessly. Her looks often combine sporty energy with a high fashion edge, making relaxed silhouettes feel directional rather than casual. She represents a generation that treats athleisure not as a trend, but as a natural part of contemporary style. When styling athleisure this season, focus on creating looks that feel relaxed yet considered. Play with proportion and contrast, letting comfort lead while still maintaining a sense of fashion awareness and individuality. There's something eternally charming about polka dots. They come back into fashion again and again, yet every time they return, they feel slightly different, shaped by the mood of the moment. For spring 2026, polka dots are stepping into the spotlight with a renewed sense of playfulness and confidence. After seasons dominated by minimal surfaces and quiet textures, this cheerful print feels like a breath of fresh air. It's nostalgic, yes, but also surprisingly modern when styled with intention. On the runways, polka dots appeared in ways that balanced sweetness with sophistication. Designers explored scale, contrast, and placement, proving that this print doesn't have to feel predictable. Sometimes dots were oversized and graphic, creating a bold visual statement. Other times they felt delicate and scattered, bringing movement and softness to the silhouette. This versatility is exactly what makes polka dots so compelling. They can shift from romantic to cool, from classic to directional, depending on the overall styling. Olivia Rodrigo has been embracing polka dots in ways that feel youthful, expressive, and slightly retro without looking costume-like. Her styling captures the emotional duality of the trend, playful yet confident, nostalgic yet very much rooted in contemporary pop culture. When wearing polka dots this spring, think about letting the print set the tone of the look. Whether you lean into softness or contrast, the key is to style them in a way that feels natural and personality-driven rather than overly themed. Spring 2026 invites us into a slightly more cinematic, romantic world, one filled with movement, shimmer, and echoes of the roaring 20s. The Jazz Age is making a beautiful return, not as costume or pure nostalgia, but as a refined inspiration shaping some of the season's most elegant silhouettes. Designers are clearly fascinated by the emotional glamour of this era, reinterpreting the iconic flapper mood through modern fabrics, updated proportions, and a softer, more wearable sensibility. At the heart of this revival is the return of the 1920s shift silhouette. With its lowered waistline, relaxed structure, and fluid midi length, it offers a graceful alternative to both strict tailoring and overly sculptural draping. Runways across multiple houses embraced this jazz-inspired energy. Chanel, Ferragamo, Tom Ford, Tory Burch, and Versace explored contemporary interpretations of drop waists, beading, and shimmering textures. When embracing this jazz-inspired mood, think about silhouettes that feel fluid, rhythmic, and slightly nostalgic without becoming literal. The goal is to capture a sense of elegance in motion, letting softness, shimmer, or relaxed structure create an atmosphere rather than just an outfit. If you've been loving the modern prep mood that defined recent seasons, Spring 2026 takes that idea and turns the page into something more expressive, more personal, and honestly, more romantic. Literary chic emerges as one of the most quietly beautiful trends of the season, blending functional wardrobe staples with a sense of storytelling. It feels like getting dressed for a life filled with books, cafe mornings, creative work sessions, and long walks through the city with somewhere important to be. Designers pushed the concept of uniform dressing into more playful territory. Instead of rigid, overly polished preppy looks, the new literary aesthetic embraces layered styling, unexpected color flashes, and pieces that feel lived in rather than perfectly curated. At Chanel, boxy tailoring introduced a relaxed intellectual polish, while Celine leaned into timeless academic elegance through refined layering. Meanwhile, Miu Miu continued to explore youthful interpretations of scholarly dressing, balancing nostalgia with modern energy. It's not about following a strict aesthetic formula, it's about creating a wardrobe that feels thoughtful, curious, and quietly confident. There's a softness to this trend, but also intelligence. A feeling that style can reflect inner worlds just as much as outer appearances. In a fast-paced fashion landscape, literary chic invites us to slow down, to appreciate texture, layering, and subtle storytelling through what we wear. Emma Chamberlain captures the spirit of literary chic in a very modern way. Her styling often feels relaxed, yet intentional, blending intellectual references with a playful, contemporary edge. She shows how this aesthetic can feel authentic and personal rather than overly styled or nostalgic. When exploring literary chic this spring, think about building looks that feel layered, functional, and slightly unexpected. Small contrasts or thoughtful styling details can bring personality and narrative into an otherwise classic silhouette. If there's one fabric that instantly changes the mood of an outfit, it's satin. For spring 2026, satin steps back into the spotlight with a renewed sense of ease and modern sensuality. Designers embrace satin in ways that felt understated yet powerful. Instead of overly glamorous or evening-only interpretations, the fabric appeared in more relaxed silhouettes that made it feel wearable throughout the day. This shift is important. Satin is being integrated into everyday wardrobes, styled in ways that feel instinctive and contemporary. There's also a deeper appeal to satin right now. It aligns perfectly with the broader fashion mood of softness and movement that defines spring 2026. As silhouettes become more fluid and less restrictive, fabrics that drape beautifully and respond to the body's motion naturally gain relevance. Satin introduces a sense of elegance even in the simplest styling moments. It can feel romantic, cinematic, or quietly powerful depending on how it's worn. That versatility is exactly why designers continue to return to it, and why audiences keep responding to it season after season. Hailey Bieber has become almost synonymous with modern satin styling. She often incorporates the fabric into her looks in ways that feel minimal, polished, and incredibly current. Her approach proves that its strength lies in its simplicity and effortless shine. When wearing satin this spring, think about creating looks that feel fluid and relaxed, rather than overly formal. Let the fabric's natural movement and sheen bring softness and confidence to the overall silhouette. Plaid is one of those prints that never truly disappears. It simply shifts personality, depending on the season and cultural mood. For spring 2026, plaid returns with a refreshed sense of attitude. It feels less traditional, less strictly academic, and far more expressive. After a strong presence in fall and winter wardrobes, designers are now reworking plaid into lighter, more playful interpretations that feel perfectly aligned with spring's transitional energy. On the runways, plaid was styled in ways that challenged its classic reputation. Instead of predictable heritage references, we saw unexpected color palettes, softer fabrications, and silhouettes that felt relaxed rather than rigid. This gave plaid a youthful, almost rebellious quality. It's still rooted in its preppy and grunge histories, but the 2026 version feels more fluid, something you wear instinctively rather than something that defines your entire aesthetic. There's also an emotional familiarity to plaid that makes it particularly appealing right now. It carries layers of meaning: school uniforms, 90s alternative culture, countryside elegance, city layering. Designers seem to be leaning into this richness, allowing plaid to become a storytelling tool rather than just a print choice. When styled with intention, it can feel nostalgic, cool, intellectual, or playful, sometimes all at once. Olivia Rodrigo often embraces plaid in ways that feel youthful, slightly rebellious, and emotionally expressive. Her styling gives the print a contemporary pop cultural relevance that resonates strongly with younger audiences. Bella Hadid brings a completely different energy to plaid, more fashion-forward, directional, and rooted in model-off-duty confidence. She shows how the print can feel elevated and trend-aware without losing its effortless appeal. When styling plaid this spring, think about letting the print become part of a broader mood, rather than the main statement. Focus on contrast, proportion, and unexpected combinations to keep the look feeling modern and personal. Tomboy fashion continues to evolve into one of the most quietly powerful style directions of spring 2026. It's not about rejecting femininity, but about redefining it, embracing silhouettes and styling choices that feel relaxed, confident, and intentionally understated. This season, designers explored tomboy influences through looser tailoring, boyish proportions, and a sense of nonchalance that felt completely modern. The mood wasn't sloppy or overly casual. It was deliberate. What makes tomboy fashion particularly relevant right now is how it aligns with broader conversations around identity and fluidity in style. The lines between masculine and feminine dressing continue to blur, allowing for wardrobes that feel more personal and less defined by expectation. In spring 2026, this translates into silhouettes that feel slightly oversized, softened tailoring that moves with the body, and styling that embraces simplicity without becoming minimal to the point of anonymity. Emma Corrin has become one of the most compelling figures representing modern tomboy style. Their looks often blur traditional gendered codes, combining structured elements with playful or unexpected styling choices. The result feels thoughtful, expressive, and incredibly fashion-forward without losing that effortless edge. When exploring tomboy fashion this spring, focus on silhouettes that feel relaxed and confident rather than overly styled. Let proportion, attitude, and simplicity guide the look. Sometimes the coolest outfits are the ones that feel almost instinctive. Spring may be known for its bursts of color and playful prints, but for 2026, many designers chose to take a completely different route, embracing the timeless sophistication of black and white. There's something incredibly powerful about this contrast. It feels clean, intentional, and quietly dramatic, offering a sense of refinement that naturally stands out amid the season's more vibrant trends. On the runways, color-blocked black and white looks appeared with renewed confidence. At Tory Burch and Saint Laurent, designers explored how this classic pairing can feel strikingly modern when styled with strong proportions and sharp visual balance. The beauty of black and white lies in its simplicity. It creates instant elegance without needing excessive embellishment or complexity. Whether interpreted through minimal silhouettes or more directional shapes, the result always feels polished and self-assured. Kendall Jenner consistently demonstrates the power of black and white styling. Her looks often feel minimal, yet impactful, showing how strong contrast and clean lines can create an effortlessly modern aesthetic that never feels overdone. When styling black and white this spring, think about creating visual balance and letting contrast define the look. Focus on clean silhouettes and confident proportions. Sometimes simplicity is the most striking statement of all. Sheerness continues to shape the fashion narrative for spring 2026, and sheer skirts in particular stand out as one of the season's most expressive yet wearable pieces. They bring an immediate sense of lightness and movement to an outfit, responding beautifully to motion and layering. After seasons where transparency often felt dramatic or purely editorial, designers are now presenting it in ways that feel softer, more intuitive, and much easier to integrate into everyday wardrobes. There's something quietly confident about this trend. Sheer skirts play with contrast, delicate yet bold, romantic yet modern, allowing the wearer to experiment with texture and proportion without overcomplicating the overall look. When styling sheer skirts this spring, think about creating looks that feel airy, balanced, and slightly unexpected. Let transparency add dimension and movement while keeping the overall silhouette effortless and contemporary. Sometimes the smallest accessories create the biggest shift in mood. For spring 2026, skinny scarves emerge as a subtle yet highly directional styling detail. Thin, trailing versions appeared on the runways of Burberry and Ferragamo, adding movement and a quiet sense of drama without overwhelming the overall look. They feel effortless, slightly nostalgic, and incredibly chic in their simplicity. What makes skinny scarves so appealing right now is their versatility. They can bring softness to sharper silhouettes or introduce a playful, romantic touch to more minimal outfits. Unlike statement accessories that demand attention, this trend works through nuance. A light layer, a flowing line, a hint of styling intention that makes the outfit feel more complete. When styling skinny scarves this season, think about letting them move naturally with the silhouette. A subtle trailing detail can instantly make a look feel more fluid, expressive, and fashion-aware. Color continues to play a major role in shaping the mood of spring 2026, and green stands out as one of the most captivating shades of the season. From fresh, almost botanical tones to deeper, more saturated interpretations, designers embraced green as a way to bring vitality and emotion into their collections. It feels optimistic yet grounded, a color that instantly evokes renewal, nature, and a sense of forward movement. On the runways, it often appeared as a statement moment within otherwise minimal styling, proving how a single color choice can completely transform the energy of a look. In a season where individuality and expression are key, green offers a beautiful way to stand out while still feeling elegant and wearable. There's also a symbolic layer to this trend. As fashion continues to reflect broader cultural conversations around sustainability, well-being, and connection to the natural world, green carries a quiet resonance. It feels fresh without being fleeting, modern, but also timeless in its emotional appeal. Zendaya has delivered some of the most memorable green fashion moments in recent years, often choosing shades that feel rich, confident, and visually striking. Her ability to make color feel powerful yet effortless makes her a perfect reference point for embracing green this season. When incorporating green into your spring looks, think about letting the color take center stage. Whether worn subtly or boldly, it can bring freshness, confidence, and a sense of renewal to the overall silhouette. Just when we thought the headscarf moment had reached its peak over the past few summers, spring 2026 proves there's still so much room for reinvention. Designers are embracing headscarves with renewed creativity, transforming them from a social media accessory into a true styling statement. On the runways, interpretations varied beautifully. At Calvin Klein, sleek 90s-inspired headscarves added a minimal urban elegance, while Giambattista Valli leaned into romantic nostalgia with oversized jewel-toned silk versions. The Jazz Age references continued at Lanvin, where headscarves enhanced the collection's Art Deco mood, and coordinated styles appeared at Emilia Wickstead and Zimmermann, creating a beautifully cohesive silhouette. They can feel vintage, playful, sophisticated, or even slightly rebellious depending on how they're styled. In a season driven by individuality and expressive details, this accessory becomes a powerful storytelling tool, one that blends practicality with undeniable visual impact. Zoe Kravitz often embraces headscarves in a bandana-inspired way that feels cool, understated, and instinctive. Her styling shows how this accessory can feel effortless and modern rather than overly retro, adding just the right touch of personality to a look. When styling headscarves this spring, think about using them to shift the atmosphere of your outfit. A simple tying technique or coordinated color choice can instantly make the look feel more intentional and fashion-aware. Spring 2026 continues fashion's ongoing conversation around visibility and layering, and this time, the bra steps confidently into the spotlight. No longer treated purely as an undergarment, it becomes an intentional styling piece, adding a subtle yet powerful dimension to the overall look. Designers explored the idea of showing rather than hiding, transforming bras into expressive elements that feel modern, playful, and surprisingly sophisticated. On the runways, interpretations ranged from bold to nuanced. At Chanel, vintage-inspired bralettes appeared delicately layered beneath sheer textures, creating a romantic sense of exposure. Meanwhile, Versace embraced a more unapologetic approach, styling embellished bras as visible focal points within the silhouette. Labels like Fendi, Ralph Lauren, and Prada offered a softer interpretation, allowing bras to peek subtly through structured layering, a styling trick that felt confident yet refined. Perhaps one of the most poetic takes came from Simone Rocha, where delicate bandeau shapes were juxtaposed with romantic textures and dramatic proportions. This contrast perfectly captures the emotional essence of the trend. When experimenting with bra styling this spring, think about visibility as a styling choice rather than a statement. Whether subtly layered or more prominently styled, the goal is to create contrast and dimension while keeping the overall mood modern and confident. If satin brought softness to spring 2026, high gloss brings pure impact. This season, designers leaned into ultra-shiny, liquid-like finishes that catch the light with every movement, creating looks that feel futuristic, confident, and undeniably glamorous. The effect is almost cinematic. Fabrics that gleam like polished metal or a brand new convertible, instantly transforming the energy of even the simplest silhouette. Across the runways, from Carvin and Mugler to Boss, Ferragamo, and Acne Studios, glossy pieces appeared styled with grounding, everyday elements. This contrast made the trend feel far more wearable, less like a statement reserved for special occasions, and more like a bold texture you can integrate into modern wardrobes. When exploring high gloss this spring, think about balancing shine with more understated elements. Let the reflective texture become the focal point while keeping the overall silhouette relaxed. Gloves might be the last accessory you'd expect to see dominating spring runways. But for 2026, they arrive as one of the season's most surprising, and surprisingly chic, styling details. On the runways, designers explored an impressive range of interpretations. At Prada, sleek leather gloves brought a sharp, modern elegance, while Mugler introduced sheer versions that felt futuristic and sensual. Across collections, materials ranged from mesh and lace to silk, satin, and sequins, proving just how versatile this trend can be. Equally suited to daytime styling, evening moments, or even more casual city dressing. color also played a key role. While classic black gloves led the charge with their timeless sophistication, pastels, metallic finishes, and punchy tones followed closely behind, showing just how expressive this small accessory can be. They reference old-world elegance and cinematic glamour, yet when styled in modern ways, they feel fresh, confident, and slightly unexpected. It's this balance between nostalgia and direction that makes them so compelling for spring. Elsa Hosk has been embracing gloves in ways that feel polished, yet fashion-forward, often using them to elevate otherwise minimal looks. Her styling shows how this accessory can instantly add sophistication and a high-fashion edge without feeling overly dramatic. When incorporating gloves into your spring looks, think of them as a refined finishing touch. Even a subtle pair can introduce contrast, elegance, and a sense of thoughtful styling. If fashion in recent seasons has been about fantasy and escapism, Spring 2026 gently brings us back to reality, but in the most stylish way possible. Utility chic emerges as one of the season's most grounded yet compelling directions, answering a very modern desire for clothes that truly work. Designers leaned into uniform-inspired silhouettes crafted from durable fabrics, proving that functionality and elegance are no longer opposites but powerful partners. Across the runways, practical details took center stage: breast pockets, field jacket references, cargo-inspired elements, and a palette dominated by earthy greens and warm browns appeared everywhere from Prada to Victoria Beckham. Khaki tones appeared at Chloe and Dior, while labels like Balmain and Isabel Marant embraced a more relaxed, almost bohemian interpretation. The result is a trend that feels adaptable, equally relevant for city dressing, travel, or simply navigating busy modern days. Irina Shayk embodies utility chic with effortless authority. Her looks often combine structured, functional elements with high-fashion confidence, creating outfits that feel strong, directional, and completely modern. When embracing utility chic this spring, think about balancing practicality with unexpected styling touches. Let functional details bring structure and confidence while keeping the overall silhouette relaxed and contemporary. If there's one styling idea that truly defines the expressive mood of recent seasons, it's layering. And for spring 2026, this concept continues to evolve in playful, highly personal ways. What started gaining real momentum in 2025 as a practical winter solution has now transformed into a creative styling language of its own. It's about intentionally piling pieces, mixing collars, clashing colors, and building silhouettes that feel dynamic and alive. On the runways, layering became almost architectural. At Loya and Thom Browne, multiple shirts were stacked to create unexpected proportions and visual depth. Meanwhile, at Celine and Miu Miu, designers leaned into bold color contrasts and sculptural styling, layering knits over shirts, outerwear over everything, and sometimes adding surprising finishing touches that made the look feel intentional rather than excessive. This trend invites personality into everyday dressing. When embracing layering this spring, think about contrast and proportion. Let different lengths, colors, or collar shapes interact naturally. Sometimes the most interesting looks come from styling that feels slightly unexpected but completely confident. Florals for spring may never feel groundbreaking, but for 2026, they return with a beautifully nostalgic twist. This season's vintage-inspired florals feel softer, more faded, and emotionally romantic, as if borrowed from another era, but reimagined for modern wardrobes. Designers are embracing delicate prints, muted color stories, and silhouettes that move with quiet elegance rather than overt drama. What makes this version of florals feel fresh is the mood they create. Instead of looking overly sweet or predictable, they bring a sense of calm femininity and timeless charm. In a season filled with bold textures and expressive styling, vintage florals offer a gentle counterbalance, reminding us that subtlety can be just as impactful. When styling vintage florals this spring, think about creating looks that feel effortless and romantic. Let the print introduce softness while keeping the overall silhouette modern and relaxed. Monochrome dressing continues to hold strong for spring 2026, offering a sense of clarity and quiet confidence in a season otherwise filled with playful contrasts and expressive details. There's something undeniably powerful about committing to a single color from head to toe. It creates visual harmony, elongates the silhouette, and instantly makes an outfit feel intentional, even when the styling itself is quite minimal. Designers explored monochrome in both soft, tonal palettes and more saturated statements, proving how versatile the concept can be. Whether interpreted through fluid, layered looks or sharper, more structured silhouettes, the result always feels polished and modern. In many ways, monochrome reflects the broader fashion mood right now. Thoughtful, refined, and deeply aware of proportion and texture rather than relying solely on prints or embellishment. Sydney Sweeney often embraces monochrome styling in a way that feels glamorous, yet effortless. Her looks show how sticking to one color can create strong impact while still feeling soft, feminine, and contemporary. When trying monochrome this spring, focus on playing with texture and silhouette within the same color story. This creates depth and interest while maintaining a clean, cohesive mood. Stripes return for spring 2026 with a refreshed, confident energy that feels both classic and directional. Long associated with nautical dressing, tailoring, and everyday basics, this season they're being reinterpreted in more expressive ways, through unexpected color combinations, varied scales, and silhouettes that feel relaxed rather than rigid. The result is a print that feels familiar, yet newly relevant. Designers played with the visual rhythm that stripes naturally create, using them to elongate, structure, or soften a look depending on how they were styled. Sometimes they appeared bold and graphic, other times subtle and almost blurred into the overall silhouette. This versatility is what makes stripes such a strong spring trend. They can feel polished, playful, or quietly modern without requiring dramatic styling. Hailey Bieber often incorporates stripes into her wardrobe in ways that feel effortless and contemporary. Her styling shows how this timeless print can become part of a clean, minimal aesthetic while still adding personality and visual interest. When wearing stripes this spring, think about letting the pattern guide the silhouette. Focus on balance and proportion to keep the overall look feeling fresh, confident, and easy. One of the most thought-provoking trends of spring 2026 revolves around a reimagining of domestic codes, what it means to dress for roles traditionally associated with femininity, care, and everyday labor. The conversation around tradwives, modern domestic aesthetics, and the visibility of working women has been circulating in pop culture for a while, and this season it finally found a clear expression on the runway. Designers explored pinafore silhouettes, apron-inspired shapes, and softly structured dresses with nostalgic 60s floral references, turning symbols of domesticity into something unexpectedly fashion-forward. At Miu Miu, the narrative felt especially layered. Rather than romanticizing the past, the collection reflected on the realities of women's work, drawing inspiration from imagery of factory workers and reframing utilitarian garments within a contemporary, expressive context. What makes this trend so compelling is its emotional complexity. It's not simply nostalgic or ironic. It acknowledges how fashion can question expectations placed on women while also celebrating individuality and autonomy. These silhouettes, once tied to limitation, are now styled with confidence and modernity, transforming them into statements of self-awareness rather than submission. When exploring this trend, think about balancing utilitarian references with contemporary styling. Let the silhouette tell a story while keeping the overall look relaxed and personal. Desert-inspired dressing emerges as one of the most cinematic trends of spring 2026. Often described as Dune-core, this aesthetic draws from vast landscapes, sun-faded palettes, and silhouettes that feel sculptural yet fluid. Designers embraced sandy neutrals, draped shapes and textures that evoke wind, movement, and survival, creating looks that feel powerful, minimal, and almost futuristic. It's a direction that feels both grounded in nature and completely otherworldly. What makes this trend especially compelling is its quiet drama. Rather than relying on bold prints or excessive embellishment, Dune-inspired dressing builds impact through tone, proportion, and atmosphere. Layered neutrals, soft metallic sheens, and architectural lines create an emotional depth that feels sophisticated and directional. In a season full of expressive styling moments, this aesthetic offers a calmer but equally striking alternative. Zendaya's Dune press tours delivered some of the most memorable fashion moments of recent years, perfectly capturing the futuristic desert mood. Her looks combined strength, elegance, and cinematic storytelling, making her a natural reference point for embracing this trend with confidence. When exploring the Dune aesthetic this spring, think about creating silhouettes that feel fluid, tonal, and slightly architectural. Let neutral shades and layered textures bring depth. If recent seasons were obsessed with the boldness of the naked dress, spring 2026 takes a softer, far more poetic approach to sensuality. Ethereal dressing emerges as a key mood, one built on translucency, romance, and silhouettes that feel almost weightless. Across the runways, translucent layers floated through collections at houses like Loya and Emporio Armani, reinforcing the season's fascination with fluidity and movement. At Althusara, dreamy silhouettes captured a sense of modern romanticism, while Dior and Carolina Herrera explored lace and sheer structures that balanced elegance with a subtle hint of vulnerability. Ethereal dressing also connects beautifully to the broader spring narrative of softness and expressive layering. These pieces move with the body rather than controlling it, bringing a sense of calm drama that feels both timeless and forward-thinking. Anya Taylor-Joy naturally embodies the ethereal aesthetic. Her fashion moments often feel cinematic and otherworldly, showing how translucent textures and romantic silhouettes can create a presence that is both delicate and unforgettable. When exploring ethereal dressing this spring, think about silhouettes that feel light, fluid, and emotionally expressive. Let sheer layers add softness and mystery while keeping the overall look modern and graceful. After years dominated by minimalism, quiet luxury, and even the bold directness of Y2K nostalgia, spring 2026 welcomes a dramatically different mood, one rooted in fantasy, refinement, and unapologetic ornamentation. The Rococo revival sweeps across the runways with a sense of theatrical romance, drawing inspiration from late 18th century France and iconic figures like Marie Antoinette and Madame de Pompadour. It feels like fashion is once again allowing itself to dream. Designers explored this historical influence through exaggerated silhouettes, delicate lace, powdery pastels, and sculptural volume. What makes this revival especially resonant now is cultural context. With renewed fascination around period drama aesthetics, museum exhibitions, and cinematic reinterpretations of historical figures, fashion's return to Rococo feels almost inevitable. It reflects a collective desire for beauty, charm, and emotional escapism. So, those were the top spring 2026 fashion trends that really stood out to me this season. What I love about this particular moment in fashion is that it feels very open. There isn't just one aesthetic dominating everything. We're seeing romance, practicality, bold color, vintage references, minimalism, fantasy, all existing at the same time. And I think that actually makes getting dressed a lot more fun because it gives you space to experiment and build a style that feels personal. I'd love to know which trends you liked the most. Are there any that you're excited to try this spring? Or maybe some that you're not so sure about yet? Let me know in the comments. I always love reading your thoughts and seeing which ones resonate with you. And if you enjoy fashion breakdowns like this, trend forecasting, and style inspiration videos, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next ones. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.